Urethanes can be formulated to be hard as a rock, or they can be formulated to be like a wetsuit material, very soft. And the formulation is all about chemistry, of course. But first and foremost, urethanes are adhesives. That's what they do more than anything else, is they bond. And so they're a glue. And the first rule, or the two rules of using any glue are what? Anybody know?
Cleanliness and dryness.
Dry and clean surfaces. And we know horses' feet are rarely clean and dry. But at the time of a trim, they're going to be clean, and so all we have to do is dry them. So one of the most important steps to all of our applications, and we cheated on this horse because it's been pretty dry lately, but all of our applications we use a heat gun. This is basically a hotter, quieter hair dryer. You can use a hair dryer. Some horses don't like the pitch of certain hair dryers, so this is quiet. It's hot. It's basically you find it in the paint department. It's for stripping paint. This particular one you can get at Harbor Freight Tools for $9, so it's really cheap. But so all of our applications usually involve 30 seconds of drying on the foot. So we make materials that are hard setting. We make materials for repairs. We make a material that you can make a shoe right on the foot for a layup situation. If the horse can't take the concussion of nailing, or there's just no wall to nail to, you can make a shoe directly on the foot. Sets in 30 seconds. They can stand on it at 2 minutes. And it's a good way to hold a foot together until something better grows out. So, but for the most part, in the endurance world, most of the products are pad materials, and these are liquid materials that are similar to syrup. They're a viscosity similar to syrup. They flow into the foot, they set in 30 to 60 seconds, and then they become a pad. So instead of putting a leather or plastic pad on, this actually bonds to the sole and frog, and it is the pad. You can shoot these materials underneath a pad, but what's better about having something that's bonded to the sole and frog is that it eliminates that extra layer of a pad between the shoe and the foot. And so we know that pads, you can have difficulty with pads working on clinches because you've added length to the foot and you've got that extra layer in there, so there's more movement. I'm going to pass these around. These are just some samples of the materials that we make. Some of them are very soft. We make one that's real soft, and that's for going under a pad. We make a dental impression material, also for under a pad. But the rest of these are actually, they bond to the sole and frog, and they actually become the pad. There are a number of riders that use these, and one of the biggest questions that comes up is what's the detrimental effect of having this material bonded to the sole and frog and having it seal the foot? And we get this question a lot from vets, and it's a valid concern, because you don't want, the foot has to breathe, we all know that. And the foot does breathe through the bulbs, it breathes through the hairline, even the wall to a certain extent. But most of that comes from the sole and the frog. A boot, the foot actually has air in there, and it does sweat. This material, because it's bonded and connected to the sole and frog, it doesn't allow the foot to sweat. And so the condition of the foot underneath is it doesn't really have a detrimental effect. The sole will be softer when you pull this material out, but you'll also have more sole depth, because by having this pad material in here, it eliminates the exfoliation that would normally take place. So it's a good way to take a thin-soled horse and give them some pretty good sole depth in one shoeing cycle. So I've sort of gotten off on a tangent. What I was going to ask is, because in the interest of time, does anybody have any specific questions about these materials? If you know something about them, or if you have heard about them but are not quite sure, does anybody have any specific questions that we can address right away? Yeah.
So the material is designed to go on the sole of a horse that's shod, a shod horse.
Correct. Although we do have a material for a barefoot horse. It's about a 2.5 to 3 week application. Just because these pad materials, mostly they rely on the shoe. The shoe helps lock it in there, because usually if the farrier has provided some sole relief, there's an undercut there, and because these materials are liquid, it'll flow under that, and it kind of locks it in there. So not only is it bonded to the sole and frog, it's locked underneath the shoe as well.
So you might, if you have your horse shod, you might want to use it because you've got a ride coming up. The ride is over. Is it, you remove it then? And
Well,
how do you do that?
the endurance arena is a little different. Most of the people that use these materials leave it in for the life of the shoeing. Most endurance people are a little more geared towards wanting that foot to breathe, and so they'll pull it out ahead of time, or after a ride. And it'll get pretty chewed up, but it usually stays in pretty well. In the barefoot world especially, I see a lot of barefoot trimmers trying to make everybody think that every horse can go barefoot. And I don't think I need to tell this crowd that that's just not possible for a lot of horses. Some horses, I mean, there's always success stories, but they're few and far between. And I see a lot of people trying to transition over a year or more their horse to barefoot, and when they really start riding it, he goes lame, and there's a setback that's going to be 6 months again of trying to get it back. So this material will stay bonded for about 5 weeks. After that, it's going to start to loosen at the heels, and as stuff starts getting under there, especially moisture, then it becomes detrimental. So yeah, if you got a horse standing in water or mud, this is not the application for that. We do make a material, that green material that may be floating around here, that has copper sulfate in it. And a lot of people mistakenly think of it as a thrush treatment, and it's really not. It's a pad material that happens to have a thrush treatment in it. And so what it does is it allows you, if you have mild to moderate thrush on the bottom of the foot, it allows you to go ahead and pad that foot without worrying about making it worse. But it's really important to get in there and get all the necrotic tissue out and really dress it, because once this material is set and it's bonded, if you leave a lot of junk underneath it, you've just created the environment that it loves. So that's why we say mild to moderate thrush is okay. Something more severe, you need to treat with something else. Actually, we use this on a lot of horses that are going on asphalt and concrete, like parade horses, because it does give them a little bit of grip. And some, there are rubber.
Right?
Say again.
Covers over the whole shoe and everything.
Not over the shoe.
No.
You can, like on laminitic feet, we fill this to ground level, because we're trying to take some of the pressure off the perimeter, off the wall. So we'll actually load it to ground level to give the horse, in other words, distribute the weight over the largest area
But the shoe is still bare.
Yeah, but if you look at this, this is the way we really want this to be. We want the shoe to still take the impact, and then we want the material to provide support and protection at the same time. And so most of the time we want a concave surface to this, and that's pretty ideal. This one this one is a little more flat, but this material is pretty soft, and so it's fairly forgiving as far as that goes.
Yeah, the front is Equipack, right?
Yes. Now, one of the things that sometimes we can get away without drying in the wintertime, in the summertime when the feet are hard and dry. But we always still recommend drying, especially when you're trimming any part of the foot. The response is to send moisture to the surface. And even in New Mexico and Arizona, when we trim feet, you put that foot down and you pick it up and there's a damp spot there. So we know there's still moisture there, and this material will bond to the first thing it comes in contact with. So if you got any dirt or any kind of dressing on the foot, or just the moisture that's present when you trim, that can mean the difference. Not drying that can mean the difference between getting it to last 1 week versus getting it to last the life of the shoeing. So drying is always a really important step for these materials. We can get away with, there are ways to get away with it, and we didn't do that on this horse because we've got mesh in there that was nailed on with the shoe that helps hold the material in. But normally we want to
one
dry.
would you-
Drying is the most important part.
Which one would you recommend for Tevis?
For Tevis, I would recommend the black Equibuild is so much better against the ground. However, you have to have a pretty good foot. If you've got if you've got a thin sole or any sensitivity, Equibuild is a little too firm. So it's kind of a trade-off. The black Equibuild is much better against the ground. However, the Equipack, the clear, is a lot easier to get out, and even though it'll get chewed up, it usually stays in, and it provides a little better cushioning for a horse that's got a thin sole. And these two components it's kind of like epoxy, so we got two sides in a cartridge, and these materials are very sensitive, so it's expensive. It's an expensive chemistry to make these. So to get to the answer to your question,
Yes.
this is about $27. Typically, this will do 2 front feet, fill 2 front feet. You can choose to, some owners choose to buy it and then have their farrier put it in.
But that competes with pads.
Say again?
That competes with pads.
Yes, yes. I mean, this eliminates pads, or some people that want pads, you can still put this stuff underneath. The thing that urethanes are known for is dampening and displacing vibration. And as opposed to things like silicone, silicone is basically like a rubber ball. Urethanes are known to not only dampen vibration, but to displace it outward. And that's why, every running shoe sold nowadays is made of urethane. Every bushing on your cars and trucks is all urethane, and it's because of that ability to not only absorb vibration, but to send it outward laterally. There's no science yet, but there's a lot of people that think that like that purple stuff that I passed around, that dental impression material, silicone, actually sends vibration up the limb. And the way you can kind of tell is, oh yeah, here it is right here. If you have a blob of this silicone, which we also make, you drop a hammer on this or drop something on this, it'll bounce off of it. You do the same, take the same thickness in urethane, and it'll just fall and just be dead. So, there's a caution to using silicones, especially in this arena. I think I'd be very careful about that because it could possibly be transferring concussion up the limb. That's just my opinion.
So when you put them in yourself, is there a big learning curve?
The learning curve is not difficult for the pad materials. Anybody can put the pad materials in. Basically, this is a peel and stick foam board. So if you got a shod foot, peel this off, you stick it to the foot, you have them stand on it, and then we fill it at the heels, put it all the way into the toe, and then back it out. They can stand on it at 30 seconds for the clear Equipack. It's 60 seconds to 2 minutes for some of the other materials. But it's pretty fast. The biggest disadvantage to doing it yourself after the horse has been shod is you don't have that ability to maybe necessarily get under the shoe and really clean it out. At the time of the shoeing, you got a clean sole and frog. The shoe's gone on. If the farrier's provided sole relief, you've got the ability for the material to flow underneath the shoe. And that really also, the biggest benefit of that, of having it done at the time of the shoeing, is that the material, it'll bond very well to steel if it's clean, no oxidation on it. So what that does is when it flows underneath the shoe, it really limits the movement of that shoe, which in turn doesn't work on the clinches. So it's a really great way to stabilize a shoe and keep it in place. Yeah.
I use adhere to glue boots on. Is there any possibility of Vettec coming out with a product that's specifically made for gluing boots on? Maybe not as hard?
There's a few different methods. We've actually used our black pad material, which is it's a liquid sole guard we've used. The biggest difficulty in gluing boots on is getting the right amount of glue so that you're not getting too much glue, which means it's going to be a bear to get it off, and the right amount of glue to keep it on there. And so typically, I've got a couple boots in my truck, but if you watch Easy Care's video, that's important. But the important thing is you don't, because we're only gluing to the dorsal, or to the wall, it's important that we don't put so much glue that when we put that boot on, it spreads all the way down the length of the wall.
Right.
Because we're going to use a screwdriver and carefully prying with a big screwdriver to get it off. So the more glue you have glued to the surface of the wall, the tougher it's going to be to get it off. So my best recommendation is about a 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch bead just around the inside upper edge of the cuff of the boot. Don't clean the wall too much. You don't rasp the wall too much. You know, just use a sanding block. But it's really kind of a trial and error with each horse because you know, obviously you want it to last, but you want to be able to.
I just have a problem with, I'm actually at the point where I just get a utility knife and cut the bottom off and peel it because,
Okay.
you know, I told my husband I need to be less good at gluing them on.
Okay.
They just,
And if
it's
you
hard to
and
get
if you
them
want
off.
anybody that wants to schedule time with me, I work with farriers all the time. I work with vets and I work with owners. There's no charge. It's just a matter of, you know, scheduling, and I will provide material. I'll make sure that you know how to do it properly. So that is available if you want. But it's a you know, since gluing on boots is kind of a new thing, there's a lot of trial and error that goes along with that, unfortunately.
I'd just like to see a product that, you know, and there was the goober glue, but it didn't hold. You know, something that's
Yeah,
a
it's
little
not made
more
for that.
pliable, like, you know, not too stretchy where they're gonna pop off, but something that, you know, you're not chiseling off cement.
Right,
And it's
right. Well,
like-
and in that regard, certainly the pad materials could be pretty effective
Yeah.
if we develop a technique for it. But
Right.
nobody wants to try it right before a ride.
Right, right.
So if you want to try something for training purposes, get a hold of me and we can, you know, we can mess with a couple
The Soul Guard,
different.
I found it wasn't bad. I didn't stick with it again because then when you go to a competition, it's like, okay, I'd rather have the product that's a bear to remove 5 weeks later
Yeah.
than something
Yeah.
only did 10 or 20 miles.
You can also, it'll be easier to remove, and I don't know, not everybody has this option, but if you let them stand in water for a few
I do
minutes.
baby oil, which
Yeah,
helps.
but these materials, the pad materials especially, need to be put on ideally like 2 or 3 days before. You know, put it on kind of the night before. On this kind of trail, could be asking for trouble. But